You know, I can understand, really, I can't understand the second reading, where St. Paul is telling us no one lives for oneself, no one dies for oneself. Okay, I get it, that what I do affects you, what you do affects me, what we do affects everybody around us. I get that. We're all connected in some way, and what we do matters to people around us. I get that, right? And I understand that if we do what that says, live for others, what we're going to be doing is willing the good of the others, and that's a definition of love. So that's saying we would be loving each other. And understand that that is what we're called to do, right? Every time we receive the Eucharist, is we're called to love, take that and share it with everybody else. I get all of that. It makes total sense to me. But what doesn't make sense is he's saying like it's already happened. And I don't know about you, but I think we're a whole lot better at living for ourselves than we are for others, right? Why is that? Well, we're all different. We have different views, different values, different outlooks on life, different ways we grow up, which leads to conflict and arguments. And as we hear in the first reading, we like to hold on to that anger and those hurts, right? We like to hold on to them tight. And when that happens, there is no love flowing back and forth. So if we want to live a life of love, if we want to live the life Jesus calls us to, if we want to live a life of Christians, what we have to do is get past that and learn how to forgive much more effectively. So let's talk about forgiveness. First thing I want to point out is we also have to learn how to receive forgiveness, right? It's one thing if I do something to you and I hurt you and you say, I forgive you. And for me to just say, oh, good, and walk off. But we need to learn how to receive that, as we heard, in our hearts, where we understand, where we take the time to reflect, what was the trigger? What was it inside of me that was causing that reaction, that caused me to behave in that way that was other than willing the good of the other? So first step, or not one first step, but a step, is learn how to receive forgiveness, right, in our hearts. The second thing is want to remember that we also have to forgive ourselves. I don't know about you guys. When I screw up, which happens a lot, it's hard for me to let go. It's hard, I think sometimes it's harder for me to forgive myself than others. But again, if I'm tied up in beating myself up, where's my attention? On me, not on you. And that is not what we're called to do. We're called to live for one another. Another thing to remember about forgiveness is it is not a feeling. It's like love. Love is a decision. Forgiveness is a decision. The feelings might still be raw. They might still be hurt. There might still be a lot of anger, but we need to decide to forgive. One of the best examples of that I remember recently, best example is Jesus forgiving his executioners while he's on a cross, right? And that's what we're called to imitate. But another good example was the Amish community in 2006, after someone had gone and killed 10 school children in their one-bedroom schoolhouse. The Amish community reached out to the killer's family and invited them to the funeral to try to reconcile. Now, 10 kids, there was still a lot of hurt, a lot of grief, a lot of probably anger, but they decided to forgive anyway. And that's what we need to do. Make the decision to forgive. Okay, and the other thing to remember is to forget this. I grew up with this phrase, forgive and forget. Yeah, let that go, right? The harder, I don't know about you, I don't know of a technique to forget. In fact, the harder you try to forget something, the more you're going to remember it. And when you remember it, you're likely to get all upset again, right? So just let it go, right? That is not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is a decision to do that. And the other thing to remember is this, as a decision can be made in an instant, right? I don't forgive you. An instant later, I made that decision to forgive. That fast. But the feelings usually don't go that fast. The feelings take a lot longer, sometimes years, right? And when those feelings flow up again, or when we remember again, we're likely to get hurt all over again and angry all over again, even though the other person hasn't done anything different. And what we have to remember is that I let that go, right? I forgive them, right? I make that decision. And every time we make that decision to forgive someone who hurt us, it takes that anger or that emotion and drops it down a little bit. And I think if we do what, look, I'm an engineer, right? When Jesus says 77 times, I think he's right. When that comes up and you say, I forgive, and you remember it, or your feelings, and you say, I forgive again, each time it's a little bit less emotion. And after 77 times, there's a good chance we can manage that. So look, over the next week, during our prayer time, let's just spend a few minutes thinking about forgiveness, thinking about who we need to forgive, some anger, some hurt that we're holding on to, or who has forgiven us, but we haven't really received it. And then let's go act like we're supposed to act, and will the good of the other, and live for one another. And so when we die, we won't be dying for ourselves. Amen?